Okay, yeah. Welcome back. We're very privileged today to be with Kevin Annett, who is the acting secretary of the International Tribunal into Crimes of Church and State, who's coming to us from Spain. Welcome, Kevin.
Thanks, Alfred. It's good to be talking to you.
I know that these past several weeks have been very active ones, both for you and for the International Common Law Court of Justice, and that we're here with a fellow journalist and program. So could you please take the program from here?
Thanks, Alfred. Yeah, I want to welcome on the show today Joshua Laments, who's an important activist with the ITC&CS in Canada. Welcome, Joshua.
Welcome. Thank you very much. I'm also the Canadian facilitator or organizer for the website as well for International Tribunal, the International Common Law Court of Justice, and I work with Kevin. I'm going to be putting this on our Radio Warrior show, which is called We the Jury with Kevin, that is able to bring us updates. And as part of our show, we're joining with Exopolitics Alfred Weber, so we're joining in a joint effort here, and we're very excited, especially me, to find out what's been happening. I know there's been quite a few black ops things happening against International Common Law Court of Justice, and I'm really thrilled to hear about what happened at the tribunal, and excited to hear your voice again, Kevin.
Well, thanks, Joshua. It's very exciting times. And just to give people an overview, first of all, the site Joshua was referring to is ICLCJ.com. That's the website for the Common Law Court, ICLCJ.com, as well as ITC&CS.org, the tribunal website. Now, if you go to the ITC&CS.org site, you'll see over the last number of weeks some tremendous things have been happening. First of all, in Brussels, on April 7th, the Second Common Law Court of Justice session convened. The first one, if you recall, the one that convicted Joseph Ratzinger and Queen Elizabeth for crimes against humanity in Canada, the genocide of Indigenous people there. That led into the second case having to do with global child trafficking. The chief defendants being Jorge Bergoglio, President Pope Francis, Adolfo Pachon, the head of the Jesuits, and Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury in England. Now, the case began on April 7th with the prosecution opening its arguments, and there have been 3 bulletins so far from the Public Information Office of the prosecutor, because the court has had to operate under conditions of secrecy and confidentiality because of threats being made to them, and also from information we were given from Rome, from sources there, an attempt to shut down the court issued by the Vatican intelligence agencies, whatever you want to call them. And in response to that, the court decided that it was important to put out weekly bulletins summarizing some of the evidence that was being put forward by the prosecution. Now, I've been working in Europe, in Holland, in France, and in Spain with the witnesses in this case of global child trafficking. Things I've been hearing just completely blew my mind. These eyewitnesses, for example, who sat in on meetings with Jorge Bergoglio planning the child trafficking of political prisoners, the children of those prisoners in Argentina during the dirty wars. 2 women who witnessed the serial rape and torture of children by former Pope Benedict and Jorge Bergoglio themselves, according to this thing called the Ninth Circle, which is apparently a child sacrificial cult operating within the Vatican and has for several centuries. And other information related to how this global child trafficking is continuing very much through the Catholic Church and its various agencies. And so it's been not only an amazing time for this stuff to come out, but in response, we've had an increasing number of people come forward. Here in Spain, I've been meeting with 2 different groups who have been leading a campaign here on behalf of the over 300,000 people who, as children, were trafficked by the Catholic Church here in Spain, where literally the children were stolen by priests and nuns. Their parents were told they had died, and then they were trafficked for between $60,000 and $80,000 each. We estimate the Vatican made over $20 billion over the last 50 years here in Spain alone through this illegal child trafficking. So this shows you some of what we're getting into now, and not accidentally. They're being, the Catholic Church has ratcheted up their attempt to sow division and confusion among our various groups, and we can talk about that in a bit. But the important thing is this stuff is finally breaking out, and I have another thing to talk about an event that happened last Easter Sunday in Maastricht. But why don't we just open it up for more conversation and questions, and then I'll get into that.
How are these? How are the witnesses bringing their statements? Now you're traveling and finding more information. Where is the conversations or the record of these witnesses going to be posted?
The actual final statements and everything is going to be similar to the format we had in the first case in genocide in Canada. If people remember, if you go to ITC&CS.org, you can see all of the evidence from the prosecution's case, 150 exhibits. These are eyewitness testimonies, videotape statements, documents, signed affidavits, and other evidence that was all posted online. We're going to have a whole package of that at the end. But the thing to realize about this case is it's so much bigger. If you can believe it. I mean, genocide in Canada is a pretty huge issue, but this is global. It's centuries old, and we're getting so much evidence coming in that, frankly, we don't have the staff or the means to really bring it all together at this point. We're trying to do the best we can, but right now, the little staff that is being used in Brussels and at other locations, they are compiling the evidence as the prosecution presents it. But eventually it's going to come out. I would say it might even take up to a year to get all of this stuff presented. We're not sure even when the verdict is going to come in yet on this. It's going to span many months from what I can see so far.
And the verdict for the actual Common Law Court of Justice, how did it come about that the verdict was to abolish the Catholic Church?
Well, that came at just a little bit of background. February 25th, 2013, the verdict in the first case came down, founding the Catholic Church, the Anglican and United Churches in Canada guilty of crimes against humanity. That following August, the Common Law Court issued a statement saying that under international law, and especially the United Nations Convention on Transnational Organized Crime, that the Catholic Church has qualified as a transnational criminal body, and so it was legally disestablished. That is, saying it may be a de facto power, but it's not a de jure power. It's operating against the law of nations, against the laws of nations all over the world, and hence it's like a rogue criminal body. The second phase of that happened in Maastricht, Holland, last Easter Sunday, when I read a proclamation and posted it on the door of the Catholic Church there. And it said basically the counterpart to that legal statement is a spiritual statement saying that the Catholic Church claims authority under what's called the keys of St. Peter, that the authority supposedly given by Christ to Peter was passed on to the Catholic Church. We found, of course, that historically there's no validity to that. There is no evidence at all that that ever occurred. And in fact, those keys represent a de facto spiritual power as well as a legal power. That is, it's a fiction. And we declared that and said on both fronts that power is null and void. It's nullified. So that means that citizens can legally occupy these churches, that they can seize the wealth of those churches and say they have no authority. And these so-called popes and cardinals are subject to arrest and imprisonment on that basis. So it's really nullifying the both temporal and spiritual power of those churches. And then now it's up in the hands of the people themselves to act on that.
So in a sense, what you're saying also is that the International Common Law Court of Justice I know you've done 3 exorcisms with the Catholic Church. So combined with the International Common Law Court of Justice, which nullifies the actions as in a sense, a governing body of the Church, you've also broken the spiritual bonds that the Church may have on its people, which is breaking their authority in a sense, whether it be good or bad. What does the exorcism actually do? What in what you have done in probably the oldest church outside of the Vatican in Maastricht, Holland, what was it that closed the deal spiritually for you in that action?
Well, I think for me personally, what it realized that it's really about stepping out of an illusion into reality. And what it allowed people to do now is to say that the allegiance that people felt they owed to the Pope or the Church because of a spiritual authority is now gone. That is, they are free to step out of that, and whether they be Christians or others, establish their own lawful spiritual as well as legal authority. So that means, for example, Catholics can step outside now, stop giving money to the Church of Rome, form their own congregations, and act according to their conscience, as long as it doesn't legitimate this criminal body now, the Church of Rome. So, I mean, it has many levels. It's like with all of this stuff, it has repercussions in frankly many dimensions. And I think that what we're witnessing now and what we'll witness in the months ahead is, now that the church has kind of inwardly collapsed, you're going to see that manifesting in the outer world as well. It's funny that the church now is rushing around trying to beatify, what they call beatify various popes. Again, more distraction, more attempts to prop up this collapsing structure. But I think, the proof is, like last year, who could have ever imagined Joseph Ratzinger would have resigned while in office? And this present Pope Francis doing a song and dance to make people think he is actually the legitimate Pope, when a lot of the things indicate that he, in fact, isn't. He's just a caretaker. And it's all a big smoke and mirrors game, really.
Well, also that he abdicated 2 days after the last judgment of the International Common Law Court of Justice that took place last year. So the empowerment and the authority that a common law court has is very powerful. Now, what are some of the actions that you're planning to be able to allow citizens to reclaim the churches and the power that the churches have had? Do you have anything planned for the next several months that will will put forward the actions that were put up by the Common Law Court of Justice?
Right. Well, we have many. It's hard to summarize. There's so many things going on. I mean, for example, in England, in Coventry and in Birmingham, in Brighton and London and Glastonbury, there's groups operating that are going to start occupying these Catholic churches, reading out the statement of spiritual and legal disestablishment, telling these officers to stand down from their office, that they're in effect expelled from those offices, and doing something that we call a recovenanting. That is, the power of a covenant, if not only in the Bible but in other spiritual traditions, is you're making a contract among each other and with the Creator. You're saying we have now a new arrangement. And so people can say, in effect what we're saying here is that the whole corporate system that came out of the Church of Rome and all of these de facto corporate institutions, whether it be governments or corporations or, the private courts now in Canada and other places that are posing as legitimate courts, all of those don't have any authority over us anymore, and we need to recovenant with one another to establish those lawful courts, judicial systems, churches, whatever, and even governments. So this is a way that people can begin to take action in that way from the grassroots.
And how do we do that? I mean, I know there are groups forming everywhere, but I'm worried about within our communities here in Western Canada, where I'm from. What actions can we do? I'm getting lots of emails and people say, I'm ready. What do I do? Well,
there's like I said in the most recent posting at ITC&CS.org, one of the things I said was there's really two aspects of this, a legal and a spiritual. On the legal front, people need to read our common law training manual, at ITC&CS.org. That gives you a lot of tips about how to set up common law courts to really adjudicate any civil or criminal matter. In terms of the church itself, though, we are putting out this week a statement on what a covenant will look like, a covenant statement to reestablish the authority of a spiritual community separate from the Church of Rome or any other community system that you're trying to set up. So that'll be coming out at ITC&CS.org. There's already groups that are forming about that. Like I mentioned a while ago, how there's actual clergy that are working with us who are breaking ties with Rome, especially in Ireland, and other countries. So there will be more material posted about this. But the important thing is for people to be creative, take action on their own, and apply this. There isn't any one blueprint for this. We've just created a model that people can follow. But essentially, we're talking about something that's much more than a reformation. It's a real reclaiming of our world, of the law, and of our own spirit.
And which law is this that you would be reclaiming?
Well, there's different names for it. Some people call it, the law of nature, the divine law. Its functional term, of course, is the common law, and that says basically that we are inherently self-governing and sovereign men and women, that there can be no legitimate authority over us unless we create it ourselves and give consent to it, and that on that basis juries and courts can arise, which are people-driven, not judicially driven. And that's, again, if you read the Common Law Manual, that's all pretty much explained in there.
Okay. Alfred, I'm taking your space here if you have questions, of course.
Well, yes, very much. I'd like to explore with Kevin the concept of disestablishment and abolition, and if you could go into those more deeply, Kevin.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think even in a system like Roman Catholicism, which traditionally is I guess you could say it's the ultimate hierarchy in the human race, where literally it was believed, and I'm using past tense deliberately, it was believed that the Pope, or Pontifex Maximus, represented a literal bridge between heaven and earth. And that, of course, was never a Christian idea. That was a Roman idea. That came from the cult of emperor worship, starting with Emperor Aurelian in around 285 and then leading into Constantine, where they said literally the emperor was Deus et Dominus, that is, master and God, master over all of humanity, and God, ruler of the heaven. It's like God and man combined. So the Pope was really a modern day Roman emperor. And like with the Roman emperors, his authority was completely arbitrary and de facto. There was no lawful basis or spiritual basis for his authority. And in fact, as the Reformation pointed out, in fact, the Roman Catholic Church completely contradicted all basic Christian teachings. And so on that basis, when we're talking about nullifying something, we're simply talking about reestablishing what originally was. That is, the whole empire and Church of Rome has been a arbitrary and violent imposition on the natural law, on the natural communities of the earth. And we look all over the planet, at the old saying, by their fruits you will know them. There is no empire on the planet that has had such a destructive impact on the human race than the Roman Catholic Church, whether that's through genocide of indigenous people, the witch burnings, the destruction of generations of children. All of this is in the continual child trafficking and even now child sacrificial cults that we're documenting. All of this is a permanent war against humanity. So when you're in condition of war, and this is upheld in international law, when you are under attack by a power, you have an obligation to dismantle that attacking power. And this is the way we're framing this. The Catholic Church is being represented a permanent war against humanity. We are disestablishing it for the security of humanity, and it's really that simple.
Right. Now, taking along looking at Pope Francis. Of course, he's from the Jesuits, and the particular role that he's carrying, it would seem that he's carrying out a role as a major disinformationalist, a major conductor of psyops, for example. And I know that this is, kind of a bit far out, but I'll just test these out on you.
Mm-hmm.
For example, right at the week of the start of the Brussels trial, Pope Francis issued a public apology for all of the harm done by abuses against children by church priests. Sort of a strategic inoculation. And that was right at the start of the trial. And that's typically what a politician would do, even though he doesn't acknowledge the trial and has refused to appear. This is, he utterly acknowledges the trial by issuing, out of the blue, a public apology. What are your comments about that?
Well, that's a very good point, Alfred. As a matter of fact, the same thing happened in Canada. Whenever, since 1998, when I first helped convene the tribunal into the Indian residential schools, every time we would expose something, our small little network, the government and the churches would take about a week, and then they would respond, but they would do it in a way to make it look like it wasn't us that was causing it. They were doing it on their own.
Exactly.
So that way they continue to try to co-opt all the time the stuff we're doing. Bergoglio did the same thing, but the thing to remember about an apology is it has a double meaning in the English language. An apologetic is a defense of your own action. So what you do legally is when you issue an apology, you're actually saying you're not liable for something. It isn't, to the masses it seems like, oh, he's saying he's sorry, that's good. In fact, what he's doing legally is saying, I am not being held liable for anything that will come out of this stuff. And the proof of that is, right about the same time, if you remember, the Italian bishops made a statement, very kind of arrogant statement, that they were not going to tell the police when children were harmed within the Catholic Church. They were going to stand on their own, canon law, which orders priests to cover up child abuse. Bergoglio turned around and agreed with them that same week. So when his face is turned towards the Catholic Church, he's saying, yeah, cover up the child abuse, that's fine. But when his face is turned towards the public, he says, oh no, we're going to be held accountable. It's a complete hypocrisy and two-faced lie, this man. And of course, Jesuits traditionally have specialized in that kind of duplicity.
Yeah, I'd sort of like to follow this up with a couple of questions. There was a major article showing Bergoglio, Pope Francis, in his papal chair in white. His face, I swear, looks like the actor Bela Lugosi, who, played all of these villains. And he has all of these children marching in front of him, these young children, say about five or six years old. And the headline is, Pope Francis rape, kill children, witnesses testify, eyewitnesses confirm. So, again, could you comment on how he's playing the sort of the big lie?
Well, what you do is you put it back in people's face, saying, look, we can get away with this stuff if we want to. That is no accident that he's parading children in front of him like that, because according to not just eyewitnesses who were at these ritual cult murders of children who saw Bergoglio there, but actual material that's being submitted to the court in Brussels now. This was from a source within the Vatican, from the Jesuit archives, released material that refers to something called the magisterial privilege. Magisterium refers to, of course, the cardinal. It refers to, it's another name for the curia, or the college of cardinals. Basically, this magisterial privilege, according to documents, is that every pope was be expected, as part of his initiation, to be engaged in these child sacrificial cults, which involve the ritual slaying of newborn children or young children and drinking of their blood, because it evokes a certain spiritual power and control over the human race to do this, according to their sick thinking. And this is something that Bergoglio himself was involved in, according to these two women who witnessed it. Now, when it's kind of like he's sending a message to everybody: we're not accountable to anybody. We're going to keep doing these crimes, and yet to the public it seems, oh, isn't that nice? He's with these kids, and it's that old grandfather image. So it's that two-faced thing we're talking about.
Right. Now let me go on. I've got a couple of follow-up questions just on this line, as Bergoglio is the major public disinformist and psyops operator. I'm looking here at Bergoglio again, and it says Israeli plane bearing Vatican logo to bring Pope back to Rome after May visit. And this is from a major Israeli newspaper. So what is this new alliance between Israel and kind of the Zionists and the Vatican and the Pope, who's sort of the major, dark forces figure?
Well, on one level, we know that the whole Rothschild connection to the Vatican Bank is very real. When there was a period when the papacy apparently banished the Jesuits. They disestablished the Jesuits for a few years. The Jesuits simply went underground and established the Illuminati. That was around 1773. And Jacob Rothschild, or the Rothschild lineage, they were very involved in that whole process. When Mussolini created the Vatican Bank, there was not only over $1 billion lira were put into the Vatican Bank by the Mussolini, the fascist government, but from the Rothschild banking interest as well. We also know this new global alliance forming between Russia and China. The Vatican is very much in there as a broker. They have transferred a lot of money out of the Vatican Bank into German and Chinese banks. We know that. We know that the Vatican has also recognized the official state-run Catholic Church in China, which was very unusual for them to do that, unprecedented. So, I mean, I think it's all part of that same stuff. Joshua, do you have any comments about any of this?
I'm just listening. It's very, very interesting. I'm just a little worried about what's happening with the governance of the world and how the Catholics are connecting with the Chinese and other groups, spreading in a sense their authority over other people, and how that's going to pan out in the next several years.
Well, it's a very big power block when you think about it. If you can add up all the Catholics in the world with all the Chinese and the Russians, then they've got a very it's Orwell coming true, in terms of the three power blocks in 1984.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, right. I have one final question, and I don't mean to make light, and this comes out of, as you know, at Exopolitics TV, we also focus on the rest of the universe and the fact that there might be intelligent life out there. And Bergoglio, right before his speech, when he came out publicly just in the week before the Brussels trial began, and made his great apology, he came again out of the blue and made a pronouncement to say that, maybe we're not alone in the universe. And that took all of us who are, in that kind of, who are watching the "we are not alone in the universe" politics, very much by surprise, because it looks like Bergoglio's making moves there. And there's a lot of research that shows that the Nazis and the Vatican and the Pentagon may have made alliances with satanic forces, with forces out in the universe that aren't friendly to humanity. And so, do you have any comment on that? I know that this is kind of out of the blue, but anyway.
No. I mean, I think, Alfred, that it's important to look at all of that because clearly there's more going on than meets the eye. I learned that over the years, when I had my eyes open about genocide in Canada, and since then, I'm frankly open to any possibility when it comes to this because when you see the depravity and the violence and the evil nature, the satanic nature of these institutions, none of that would surprise me. The stuff I've heard these last few weeks from my witnesses at these satanic rituals involving senior Catholic cardinals, Prince Bernhard of the Bilderbergers, the British and Dutch and Belgian royal families, even Queen Wilhelmina, who was given sanctuary in Canada, her family members apparently were involved in the same satanic killings at the Brantford Indian Residential School. We found information about that now. And they were given legal sanction or legal immunity while in Canada to do these things, according to documents that we've got from the from Canadian government sources. So all of this stuff indicates, like I said, a war against humanity. The Catholic Church being one of the major figures about that, but clearly there's other forces behind that we're only beginning to reveal. So I think we have to keep digging on all fronts to expose these things.
Now, from the evidence that you know of, both in the first trial and that is beginning to come out at the second trial, it would seem to me that it would be fair to characterize the Vatican, the College of Cardinals, and the Papacy as a satanic coven. Is that true?
Absolutely. I think that's literally, not just spiritually and metaphorically, but literally they are a satanic network living off the blood of the innocent, especially of the newborn. That's one of the reasons that so many children are regularly trafficked through Catholic Church agencies. They feed off the fear and trauma that occurs in the innocent. They literally feed off it. And it isn't just through the overt means of sacrifice, but the rampant child rape in the Catholic Church that's actually authorized and encouraged by the law Crimen Solicitanis. All of that shows, a parasitic system feeding off that suffering. And so I would say absolutely that's what they are.
It also seems that globally, that every global governance group right now in Hollywood, there's coming out all kinds of evidence of children who were raped by people who are the head of states all over the world. They're coming out with the Catholic Church and other groups. It seems that those who are in power feed off of children, and sometimes I don't understand why, but it seems to be the same MO everywhere. Can you comment on that, or what's your point of view on how that works and why?
Oh, I mean, it's kind of like with the Indian residential schools. The Jesuits set the model, and then everybody else copied it. All the Protestant churches and the governments and everything. Similarly, they know, there's no better place to get children. There's no better place to cover up child murder in that than through the Catholic Church. We've had a lot of examples of that on the ground in the Aboriginal community, in the Indigenous community. But I think, this is so endemic to the society that now it's a question of almost where isn't it happening, not where is it happening.
Exactly.
So what are the next steps with regard to the Brussels trial? What do you see coming up in these next month or so?
Well, last week there was a 2-week adjournment because so much evidence was coming in. There were 8 witnesses whose affidavits were put forward or the videotaped testimonies. The court needed some time to go over that, so they adjourned for 2 weeks. I believe they're reconvening on May the 5th. And again, I'm going to be there working with them during that time. There's new people coming forward, especially in France and Spain, with a lot of really vital information about this, and especially the Pope's role, so-called Pope's role in a lot of this, and the key role of the Jesuits. So that the court's going to continue, and we're going to say as it goes how much we're able to publish, how long this court case is going to go on. It's kind of open-ended at this point. The 27 jurors are looking at all the evidence as it comes through, and we're going to continue to put out these information bulletins so that people can learn about it. Also, as a way to encourage other witnesses to come forward. So I would say, Alfred, that this is a work in progress very much, and it's stimulating groups to form that are taking action. Like I said, in America and England, we have the best response on the ground. We have common law courts forming all over those countries, probably because the common law is such an entrenched part of their legal and social traditions. But, I often say, well, Canada is kind of a backwater in a lot of ways. There's a lot more fear in Canada to undertake this action. But even there, you're finding more and more, like Joshua said, more and more people saying now, like, what do we do? So I say, for people listening, go to ITC&CS.org, read the Common Law Training Manual, write to us, write especially to ITCCSCentral@gmail.com, and they'll give you a lot of instructions and help about how to form groups in your local area. I'll be coming back during May through North America and U.S. and Canada, and we'll be having more updates on more of these programs with what things are happening and how people can be involved.
The manual is also available on ICLCJ.com as well. And more PDFs and Word documents and documentation for those forming common law courts will become available soon. So when you do your own actions, you'll be able to use documents that will be tailored to your personal actions or group actions as well. Kevin, what the information that is coming to the court right now, is it people are coming up with more personal information? They're starting to find out about it. Will that information go to the next common law court, or are they taking actual witness affidavits that are coming that are freshly coming to the surface?
They're continually taking testimonies as they emerge, and this isn't just of eyewitnesses to these crimes. These are also insiders. We've had more people come to us from within the church. They're being treated quite carefully, because for all we know, they could be plants. It could be false information to try to discredit us. It's being looked at very carefully by some of the experts that work with the court. But definitely there has been a back-channel communication coming to us from the Vatican. There's a Belgian politician, Laurent Louis, who is now working with the court. I met with him and his people. They very much, after the Belgian election on May 25th, they are going to be working to bring political support to the court. Laurent Louis was the one member of parliament in Belgium who stood up and accused the Prime Minister and other leading members of the government of being child rapists.
Yeah, he called him a pedophile to his face.
That's right. And he also wants the Marc Dutroux case reopened. Dutroux was a serial killer who, in jail, started naming top members of the royal family and others as part of the child killing network that he was part of. Laurent Louis is a man under attack like we are, and we need to give him help. So all of this is a sign of the progress the court is making.
Good. Alfred, I would just like to make a comment towards a comment you made earlier, because I've been following it quite a bit for the last almost 10 years. A lot of the sacrifices, a lot of the activities against children, empowering these global groups. I've heard for some time now that they're using this to bring up an untrue entities. I know that several people, even from NASA, were commenting that an alien force is coming, that are untrue beings manifesting themselves in a physical form that are actually entities. It may seem that this is irrelevant concerning the exploitation, the brutal murder and sacrifices of children, but I think there's a tie-in here, and I've been thinking about it for quite some time, listening to a lot of the documentation that is coming out. Do you have any source information or a comment about the possible link with this?
Well, yes. I wanted to just be very tentative in bringing it into this dialogue, because we're engaged in litigation and in trial proceedings at this point, and so as not to taint any of the trial proceedings, because it is very difficult to evaluate what we would call dimensional phenomena, that is, phenomena from other dimensions outside of our time-space dimension, in a court of law. But the Vatican and other entities such as the British monarchy and the what they call the black nobility and the black monarchies of Europe, such as the Dutch throne, have been engaging in spiritual warfare by going through ceremonies that engage, we can call them, quote, satanic entities, that is, negative dimensional entities. These are matters which science is beginning to treat, but they can't yet, it's very difficult to bring these into a legal context. You can bring them into a context of exorcism or a context of spiritual warfare or of meditation and prayer, but not into a legal context. So I just wanted to bring it up in a very tentative way here, so as not to taint the conversation or the proceedings around the legal proceedings with the court.
Thank you very much for the comments.
Thanks, Alfred. That was really well put, and I think that's part of the tension in what we're doing is we need to operate on the personal and the political, on the spiritual and the legal, and not to mix the two sometimes, but see the relationship between the two at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so that's what we're learning to do, I think, better than we did before. But definitely, it's all very relevant, and we're finding that especially with some of the people I sat down with this week. They made it very clear that the only reason they were still alive after enduring these horrible tortures is because of a spiritual presence that was protecting them. As a matter of fact, one of the women said that as she saw the other children butchered in front of her, she felt that their soul was being given to her to behold in protection, so that they couldn't be taken by these entities who were operating through the people doing these ceremonies. Literally, they were eating the souls of these children. But this woman said she was holding their souls for them, is one of the ways she put it. So, I mean, there's this whole aspect of why these ceremonies are actually occurring. What is it on a higher level that's really going on? So, this is stuff that will be talked about and looked at as part of the at least the testimonies of the people who are appearing before the court.
Wow, I know that in our area here, what we've been doing in the last several years is binding the stronghold. We have men and women that are actually going to locations and standing there with a group of people, putting a staff on the territory and say, we bind the structure and authority that has destroyed our nature, our people, the land, and taking back power, even by a spiritual representation. And these things have really seemed to affect the different areas, and it's giving strength for people by taking back something that has been usurped from us.
Well, that's interesting, because that's a part of the language I used in this third exorcism and in Maastricht, which was the It's an interesting place. It's where the Maastricht Treaty was signed, creating the European Union.
Yep.
And it also is the oldest Catholic church outside Italy. It was from the 4th century, this church, and it was a power center. I went down into the heart of this Catholic church earlier, and there was definitely an entity present there. And part of the exorcism was a dialogue with this entity saying that you are bound now, and the power you had over people is unbound. And that's, what Winifred was mentioning earlier, this process. That's exactly what we're doing now. We have freed many of these souls that are trapped, and also that are presently trapped in spiritual bondage to this false Church of Rome. So, I think it's all part of that broader thing we're talking about.
Alfred, I really want to thank you and Exopolitics for allowing Radio Warrior Show and We the Jury to be part of what you do on the internet and for the world. Thank you very much.
Oh, and we likewise are very grateful to be part of your show also.
Well, I hope we can, in 2 or 3 weeks when I'm back, or at least heading back, maybe we can do another one, guys, and continue to collude in this way, cooperate.
Yes.
Sure.
Thank you again.
And thanks. And just to remind people, follow our work at ITC&CS.org. There'll be new updates coming this week. Thank you all, and carry this on, each one of you. Thank you.
Also connect with ICLCJ. We are our site is going to be partnering with some websites in Coventry and in other parts around the world, so you'll be able to link to these sites that are particularly doing actions in their own areas.
That's ICLCJ.com. The Coventry Common Law Court has created their own website. It looks really good, and urge people to, again, find that at ICLCJ.com.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joshua. Thanks, Alfred, and all of you.
Okay. Bye-bye now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.